You say you never pulled the trigger, but the gun went off.
Right.
You do the ABC interview, and it was kind of left there. That will not make sense to people. If a bullet comes out of a gun, they say, well, then someone fired it and it was in your hand.
That's a clip from Chris Cuomo's new podcast featuring Alec Baldwin. He will respond, perhaps, to an FBI report allegedly saying the gun didn't just go off. FBI allegedly says that Baldwin pulled the trigger. It's been 288 days since Baldwin killed Halyna Hutchins, and still nothing. No charges, no arrest warrant. Just Baldwin doing podcasts professing his innocence. He wants us to believe that the revolver fired by divine intervention or some cosmic force beyond his control. Bob Bianchi's here, former homicide prosecutor, now defense attorney in New Jersey. Bob, we will not ask you to weigh in on Freya, but on Mr. Baldwin here. I know the armor was supposed to make sure it was unloaded. I understand that it's practice that the director's supposed to do all these things for guns on the set. In the end, there was a gun in his hand. He pulled the trigger. Somebody died, and he is out living his happy life. If that happened, if that was you or me, that would not be the case, right?
I'm not sure I would say that, Leland, to be honest with you. I've handled lots of cases like this where there are accidental shootings that charges were not brought. The devil's in the details, and what a lot of people do is you see a really bad thing like this, and you see a guy who's saying that I didn't pull the trigger, and now the FBI report is coming out and say the trigger had to be pulled, and you don't like that. It doesn't feel good. But the fact is they've got to meet the elements of the offenses in New Mexico law, which just doesn't mean you had a gun and someone died accidentally. You have to show involuntary manslaughter, which means you have to prove to 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt, which is not always an easy thing to do, that he did not use due care and circumspection. And the thing that where the defense is definitely going to go here is on two major points. Number one, the reason standard industry is that the armorer and the assistant director are responsible for this, that he was handed this weapon, was told it was a cold gun, because we all know on sets that people pull guns out, they point them at people, and they pull the trigger. So that's one defense. The second one is that you have a medical examiner who's an independent agency who's saying this was an accidental death. So as a prosecutor, I'm like, now I got to fight my medical examiner about this.
Well, I guess the medical examiner could change their report, right, and say in the light of the new facts.
Yeah, of
okay,
course.
you're not buying it. Listen to Alec Baldwin on ABC saying he didn't pull the trigger.
It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
What did you think happened? How did a real bullet get on that set?
I have no idea.
Okay, rule number one in gun safety, you're handed a weapon, you make sure yourself, you verify yourself that it is empty. That is rule number one. Anybody who's ever handled a weapon, ever been to a shooting range will tell you that. How does not being simply looking in the chambers to make sure there's no bullets, how is that not negligent?
You got to show, it may be negligent, but the question is whether or not it's criminal conduct. And the bottom line is these actors aren't necessarily have to be trained in firearm safety. That's what two people before them are supposed to be trained in. Interesting note here, Leland, is that the armorer is actually suing the company that provided the ammunition, saying that the ammunition was mixed with dummy bullets and it was mixed with live rounds, and that she did not know that. Now, that's really bad. But the fact of the matter is, well, how is an actor supposed to necessarily know this? I will say this, Leland, to get to the point that I know everyone wants to get to, there is one piece of evidence that if it turns out to be true, could be problematic for Baldwin from a criminal law standpoint. And that I pulled out is where he supposedly was advised that if you're cross-drawing your weapon, which was what was going on here, and you're doing it in a practice session or, as you're rehearsing, that you're never to point it at anyone and you're not to have your finger on the trigger. If, in fact, he was advised that, and he did not follow those guidelines, then that is where prosecutors will say he did not use due care and circumspection. That's a big one if it comes out to be true.
That's very big. We'll see if he's asked about that tomorrow on Chris Cuomo's podcast. It drops tomorrow, and we'll see where this goes. I can't help but thinking he's getting special treatment, but you make an excellent case, counselor. You can be my defense attorney anytime.
You got it, Leland. Thanks.
Good to see you. Yeah.